After a hugely symbolic day when the Brexit process finally became real, the question marks remain. The warnings are still coming in thick and fast. But tonight, the First Minister, Cadwyn Jones, struck an unusually upbeat tone when he said that while there were dangers, there was no reason why Brexit should be disastrous for Wales.
If this is done properly, then actually the effect can be minimal. The effect can be such that it won't cause us any difficulties at all, or minimal difficulties. If it's done badly, it's a potential disaster. It makes Wales and the UK look as if we're out in a limb somewhere, a group of islands off the coast of Europe that isn't part of a very large market.
Earlier today in the Senedd, he'd expressed frustration that the Welsh Government had not been allowed to contribute to the letter sent by Theresa May notifying the EU of the UK's decision to leave. Meanwhile, in the Commons, the Prime Minister told MPs that Brexit will mean a significant increase in the Welsh Government's decision-making powers after a consultation.
It is the expectation of the Government that the devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland will see a significant increase in their decision-making power as a result of this process.
Plaid Cymru welcomed that commitment, but a big focus for the party was to warn about the possibility of tariffs for Welsh firms exporting to the EU.
It doesn't take a genius to work out that if you put a 10% tariff on parts coming into a company and the finished product going out, that many Welsh businesses are not going to hang around and face those costs.
In contrast, the leader of UKIP at the Assembly, Neil Hamilton, said that even if the talks between the UK and the EU collapsed, and industries like farming then faced a big increase in the cost of trade, the impact could still be managed.
Given the Brexit dividend, we will get back from the EU £8 billion more than currently the EU spends in Britain. The UK government will have money in its pockets to ensure that farm incomes don't suffer, whatever the trade terms are of our relationship with the EU.
There was a sceptical note struck by the Liberal Democrats about the time frame of the deal and about the proposal for the Assembly to have further powers.
She talked about the powers to the National Assembly coming after consultation. Some of those powers will reside in Whitehall still, others will come to Cardiff. Which ones? We're in the preliminary stages, now that the phony war has ended, of the real world as this issue really hits the country.
And so the clock starts ticking on a 2-year time frame in a process that will change the relationship of the UK and Wales with the EU forever.
So what are the key issues for Wales in the upcoming Brexit negotiations? We're more reliant on EU funding and trade than anywhere else in the UK, so expect both to be high on the Welsh Government's agenda. Our economics correspondent Sarah Dickens reports.
A day of new beginnings, 13 of them, and a new dawn for the Welsh economy. Sian and Ken hand-rear pedigreed pigs. They're among the 84,000 who work in Welsh agriculture. Food and farming is worth £6 billion a year to our economy, so this Brexit deal will affect many rural livelihoods. Ken thinks it'll end cheap pork imports.
When you look at the quantity that we bring into the country, you know, it's colossal. We produce in Wales 5% of what we eat in Wales. Our regulations have gone to the point where we've got high welfare pork in the country, and what's comes into the country is not of same standard. It is subsidised. We just need to be able to compete on this level playing field against what's coming in.
Not everyone is as confident. Will Westminster replace the farm payments Wales has had from the EU, worth almost £200 million a year? And what about exports? 90% of Welsh red meat goes to the EU.
So this is the finished product.
A free trade deal is what Karen John wants. She runs a glass recycling company here on Swansea Docks. Wales exports more goods to the EU than any other part of the UK. It's Karen's biggest market.
So in terms of Brexit, what do you want to get from it?
I'd love to have tariff-free trade. It's highly unlikely that we're going to get that, I know. But that would be the best outcome for us.
Have the contracts that you've had or the relationship that you've had with your customers changed since Brexit?
Most definitely. They've said that whereas I would normally get maybe a 5-10-year contract, supply contract, that's impossible until we know the status
That's directly
trade.
affecting you. You
Oh,
would have
without
got
a
a
doubt.
10-year contract.
Oh, easily. That's the norm.
And what can you get now?
1.
3% of the Welsh workforce comes from other countries in the EU, a much smaller proportion than almost anywhere else in the UK. But for those like Karen, who has 4 Polish employees, a priority is to learn whether they can stay.
Well, they want security. They've been here for 8 years. They've worked for us for 8 years. They've experienced their neighbours treating them differently, which is so sad. And they want, if they could stay here, they will.
Do you need them?
I'll love to keep them.
At the other end of the docks is the new Swansea University Bay campus. It cost £450 million to build, half from EU funds. Since 2000, Wales has had more than £5 billion from this pot of cash designed to make us wealthier. But we remain the poorest part of the UK. Dr Ben Evans is developing the Bloodhound supersonic car in Swansea's EU-funded laboratories. He hopes Westminster will replace the funding. But it's not just about money.
Without the access to European funding that we've had over the last few years, the Bay campus, the new campus here at the university, wouldn't have happened. Our research programmes, our collaborations, the European Union has been critical for that. So the thing that I would be asking of our British negotiators is make sure that there are as few barriers to allow me to continue the partnerships I already have with Spain, with France, with Germany, as possible.
Despite different views of Brexit, most agree the Welsh economy has been more reliant on the EU than most of the UK, particularly for trade and EU cash. The battle is for a Brexit deal that helps us flourish.